In this video, I'm going to share with you the steps on how to speed read legislation using an AI tool like NotebookLM. Let's say you're in your legal studies and you have just started a new semester and you have just been advised which pieces of legislation is in scope for your learning and for your assessments. And you've also been advised which sections of that piece of legislation is relevant to the different pieces of your learning. So the worst thing you can now do is to jump straight to those particular sections in a piece of legislation. What you need to do is, before jumping in to the detailed sections of a piece of legislation, is you need to develop a strategic view first of what the legislation is about, its purpose, its objectives. All right, so that's what we're going to start with today. But with great tools like NotebookLM, it can make it really easy and quick for you. So let's get started. But stop, before we jump into any AI tool, I suggest you always scan your eye down the contents page of the legislation. So whether that's an online version of the legislation or a PDF version, which is what I have today. So let's do that first before we jump into NotebookLM. So I have the cover page here for the National Disability Insurance Scheme Act, Commonwealth 2013. I'm just going to scroll down to see how long my contents page is. Quite often that can give you an initial feeling as to how long your legislation is. So let's have a quick look at this now. So we can see here the contents page starts here, and straight away I can see in part 2 are the objects and principles. So what I would suggest is that you always look for this particular area of your legislation, and that will help start building a high-level understanding of the general purpose of the legislation. So in here we can see the objects of the Act are on page 4, and the general principles guiding the actions under this Act on page 6, and so on. So that's a really important section and a great place to start. I'm just going to scroll down to see how long this contents page is. So there's page 1.
Page 2. And you can see here this legislation is a really long piece of legislation. So, and we are still scrolling down the contents page. And I'm still going. Yes, still going. All right.
So we get the point that some pieces of legislation are very voluminous and can be quite overwhelming when you first open them up. And I still haven't got to the bottom of my contents page. So my level of anxiety as possibly a new law student is increasing very quickly. And that's when I might be able to use something like NotebookLM to help me calm down and look at some summary information with the help of a great AI tool. And you'll notice I'm still going on the contents page. Still going. I'm wanting to get down to that page 4 to have a look at the objects and the principles. Sorry, still going. Here we go. So we are finally there after getting RSI from scrolling down for so long. Here's the objects and principles for this legislation. So as I said, a great place to start. Let's move on now to using NotebookLM. So here we are on the homepage of NotebookLM. For our example today, I want to upload a piece of legislation called the National Disability Insurance Act, Commonwealth 2013. This is based in Australia, if you're curious. Right, to do this today, what I am going to do is create a new notebook. So let's get started. You, first of all, just click on the Create New button to create a brand new notebook. And then you're presented with the Add Sources page. And from here, you can see the different file types that you can upload or links, etc. Now, my piece of legislation, I've got saved as a PDF document. So I'm going to be uploading it as a PDF, just using the Choose File link just here. But you'll notice down the bottom here, if you do happen to have a link to the legislation, then that's another way of providing the information into our new notebook. But let's go up to Choose File, and I'll upload my PDF document and navigate to my NDIS Act. You may need to wait a few moments for it to upload. Excellent. So I can see now that my PDF document has been uploaded and it has automatically looked at the information and given me up the top here a name for my notebook. You can of course just click over the top of that and update that if you want to. But what it does is it's already looked at the content I have uploaded and it's already given me a really nice short introductory paragraph. So if this is a piece of legislation that you just knew nothing about and this is the first time that you've come across it, hey, this is a really good starting point. So what I would suggest you do is you literally just pause and you read the paragraph that's provided here. But the parts that I want to share and focus on right now is in the middle here, down the bottom of the chat panel. Now, notice down the bottom that there's already some pre-populated questions, and this is pure gold for you in terms of starting to develop your understanding of what this legislation is about. So NotebookLM has already analyzed the information and has already pulled together and presented us with a really good starting point on some questions. But let's have a look at the questions and see if that helps us. And so I'm just going to click on it, let it do its magic. Might have to wait a few moments. So our question here is, how does this legislative framework aim to empower individuals with disabilities within Australian society? So already it's now come up with what I think is an excellent first question and a great starting point to start learning about the purpose of this legislation. Let's have a look now and just see what other questions NotebookLM has given us. I might just select the second question, which is summarise the CEO's powers regarding participant plan variations. The CEO of the NDIA, so that's the agency that administers this act, has several powers regarding the variation of a participant's plan as outlined in the sources. So let's just scroll down and it looks like it's given an overview of the powers of the CEO for administering this plan. And let's have a look at another question before we move on. Explain when the CEO must consider a participant's continued eligibility. All right, and again, you're presented with some great summary information. So that is some excellent functionality that is going to help save you time. All right, now the other thing that I want to share with you in this demonstration today is I'm just going to scroll back up and I want to demonstrate the mind map function, which is over here on the right. Now, if I click on the mind map function, and you might need to wait a few moments. Great, so it looks like it is ready now for us to have a look at. So let's click on the link. And if you're a visual learner, then I think you're going to love this. So what it's done is, again, it's looked at all of the contents in the NDIS Act, and it's providing us a mind map that we can now navigate around and we can drill down into the details if we want to. But let's just click around and see how it all hangs together. So what we've got here, it's just summarising NDIS Act 2013. So let's say I want to have a look at the next level of information. So there's a section on participant plans, and in here I can see it talks about reasonable and necessary supports, what the content of the plans are, how the plans are managed, or if plans need to be reassessed. And again, I can just continue drilling down if I want to, but I'm just going to go back and you can drag the mind map around like that. Now I'm just going to close that, and what I would do is scan your eyes over each of these sections. And the other thing you can start doing is actually taking some images of this mind map and then just pasting that into your study notes. And let's just maybe open up one more down here, NDIS rules, categories of rules. Let's click on there. Right, so now I'm starting to drill down into the detail. So let's see what NotebookLM provides us. Right, so what it has now provided is it's now drilled down and given us further details on that particular part of the legislation. So it's talking about the categories of rules. So discuss what these sources say about categories of rules in the larger context of NDIS rules. And now it's given us a nice summary of how the rules are categorized for the NDIA and for the NDIS. So that is an amazing way to look at this legislation from a high level perspective and sort of hover over the top of the entirety of the legislation. And then when it's of interest to you, you can then drill down very quickly and swiftly into further detail. Now, let's say I've finished looking at my detail. What you can do is you go back over here and you can open up your mind map again, and then you can just carry on with your navigation at this high level view and then drilling down when you need to. Now, as I've mentioned in other videos, remember you also have the briefing doc function available to you in NotebookLM. So over here in the right hand side in the studio panel, if I click on the briefing doc link, and you might need to wait just a few moments. Great, it looks like it is ready now. So I'll click on the link. And again, it's provided us a really good summary of the entire legislation. So remember that a particular section of legislation never stands in isolation. One more tip, if you happen to be a really new law student, what I suggest you do is very early on in your studies is that for the jurisdiction that you're studying law in, is that you try and get a really good understanding of what the structure is of a typical piece of legislation. So what is the hierarchy of the information? Now, I can share for the area that I studied in New South Wales in Australia. I'll give you a couple of examples to illustrate what I mean. Using the PDF, you might remember that it was really quite cumbersome to navigate through the PDF and navigate around even just the contents page because it just went on for so many pages. Now, the benefit of using your online portals for accessing and reviewing and reading legislation is that normally the contents is truncated, and so it makes it a lot easier for you to navigate through the contents and hopefully find information that you're after. Now, the hierarchy here in Australia, this is a Commonwealth piece of legislation, but it's similar for New South Wales as well. And that is legislation is normally grouped in the following hierarchy. It's normally starts with a chapter, then goes into parts, and then for some pieces of legislation, it will also provide divisions and also subdivisions. Not every piece of legislation will have divisions though. It might just go chapter, parts, and then it might go straight to sections. And as you may have already picked up, sections legislation, that is the building blocks of a piece of legislation. So the hierarchy though is about how is it that all those different sections of a piece of legislation is pulled together into a full act. All right, so in Australia, we've got chapters, parts, sometimes divisions and subdivisions, and then sections, and then also you normally have subsections as well, and then also paragraphs. All right, so try and keep that in mind, and that will help you navigate any contents, whether it's a paper-based legislation or an online portal. So let's have a quick look now on my examples here. So as I said, we can see here at the top level of that knowledge hierarchy in this piece of legislation is we've got chapters. Now, if I open up one of these chapters, let's go down to chapter 3. See there, we can now see I've got some parts. And let's see if there's any divisions or subdivisions or whether it just goes straight to sections. I'll just open up that. Now in this part, it looks like it's gone straight to section numbers and there's no divisions or subdivisions, all right? So straight away I can see this is now taking me to section 18 person may request to become a participant. So of course I could just click on any of these links and it will take me straight to that spot or straight to that section in the legislation. Mind you, my screen is taking a little bit of time to display. There we go. So there's section 18 up the top there. So I think that's really helpful for you to have a knowledge and an awareness of what is the hierarchy of legislation in the jurisdiction that you're studying. I'll just close that up. And let's now have a look at a New South Wales legislation site. Now, because this is Commonwealth legislation, I'm on the Australian Federal website where we access all the Commonwealth legislation. So the user interface here looks quite different as opposed to being in one of the state-based legislation sites, which I'll hop over now to New South Wales. And you can see up here, so this is the main New South Wales legislation online portal. And I have here probably my all-time favourite piece of legislation, the Evidence Act. And in here, the way they've got this set up on this website, it's probably my favourite website in terms of how they've used the real estate of the screen to present the information. And once again, you can see over here, so you've got the chapters, you've got parts. So let's just jump down now to Chapter 2, Adducing Evidence. And in here we do have the next level down, Part 2.1, and then we do have a division. Division 1, Division 2, and then it goes on to the various sections. And again, I can just click on any of these areas here and it will take me straight to that spot in the legislation. So I remember in a number of my assignments when it came to evidence and admissibility issues, it was really quite easy to navigate this online portal, and I could very quickly jump to, let's say if it was a hearsay legal issue or some other, it might be opinion evidence, I'd come down to opinion evidence, or it might be around admissions. So what are the rules around evidence where there's an admission and so on. Now, what I particularly loved about this piece of legislation is that at the beginning of Chapter 3, if I just scroll back up here, and I haven't seen this in any other piece of legislation yet, but what I loved about this particular piece of legislation is it actually includes a process map. And as a business analyst, I live and breathe by process maps, and I couldn't believe it when I saw this amazing process map in Chapter 3 of the Evidence Act. And it literally just walks you through the steps and it then directs you to the appropriate area of the legislation. So that's just a little tip for anyone who's studying New South Wales related law. And actually this particular chart or process map is included in all of the Evidence Acts right across Australia. So yes, you'll all get to have the joy of studying evidence law during your legal studies. Anyway, so that really just concludes, I suppose, this extra tip, and that is it's really important and very helpful if early on in your legal studies that you just develop an awareness of the typical generic structure of legislation in the jurisdiction that you're studying. So that concludes my video today. Hopefully now you have a few extra tips on how to get your head around a piece of legislation really quickly using an AI tool like NotebookLM. I'll see you next time.